As the days go by, the suffering of Americans only grows. The cost of living increases and wages stay stagnant, leaving individuals with a feeling of helplessness. With the upcoming months estimated to bring further economic instability and sky-high prices, many wonder how long they can sustain this newfound hardship. So, when will things become too expensive to bear? How will American citizens respond when overburdened by the price tags of necessities? Will panic ensue as dread slowly creeps in? As the days of pandemic-driven economic uncertainty loom on, Americans everywhere experience rising anxiety over what may come. With news reports of rising prices and shortages in some major cities and states, it is no surprise that people fear the worst when it comes to their finances. In the upcoming months, this fear could be realized as prices increase and availability decreases, a sign of the times we are living in. A reliable measure of inflation's impact on the economy, the Consumer Price Index, CPI, is published monthly. Although this aggregate figure is helpful for policymakers and financial experts, most consumers encounter inflation while making purchases. The year-over-year increase in consumer prices is predicted to have slowed to 6.2% in January from 6.5% in December. It would be the seventh straight slowdown in a row. Monthly inflation, however, is predicted to have increased by 0.5% based on responses from a poll of analytics conducted by data provider FactSet. That's a lot faster than the 0.1% increase saw between November and December. Here is how prices of different items have increased. Food. In January, both the overall food index and the index for food prepared at home saw increases of 0.5%. During the month of January, 4 of the 6 key food category indices tracked by supermarkets rose. The index for other food at home increased by 0.7%. Meat, poultry, and fish all saw price increases of 0.7% in the last month. In January, the price index for cereals and baked goods grew by 1%, while the price index for non-alcoholic drinks rose by just 0.4%. Vegetable prices declined 2.3% month over month, while fruit prices fell 0.5%. In January, there was no change to the index tracking dairy and associated items. After growing by 0.4% in December, the restaurant food price index grew by 0.6% in January. During the last month, both the limited service meal index and the full service meal index have gone up by 0.7 percentage points. During the last year, the index tracking the cost of eating out from home increased by 8.2%. Over the last 12 months, the index for full service meals went up by 8.1%, and the index for limited service meals went up by 6.7%. The food at home index went up by 11.3% in the last year. For the previous 12 months ending in January, the index for cereals and pastry items increased by 15.6%. Fruits and vegetables had a rise of 7.2%, while dairy and allied items saw an increase of 14% among the other major food categories sold in supermarkets. Consumers may soon feel some comfort at the grocery store as wholesale egg prices have plummeted from record highs. Nevertheless, it is not a sure thing in the short term due to the dynamics of egg pricing from the wholesale to the retail market and other variables. UMA reports that the price of a dozen eggs dropped to $2.61, a drop of 52% from its high of roughly $5.43 on December 19, and a drop of 47% from the start of 2023. Barry, inflation has certainly made its presence felt in the baking community as of late. The costs of flour and sugar, two baking essentials, have recently increased dramatically. Flour prices increased by nearly 27% from a year ago, with a 3.4% increase in January to 54 cents per pound. Sugar's average price rose 1.9% last month, reaching 86 cents per pound. That's roughly 22% higher than January 2022. Bread is another basic item whose price is going up. Wheat bread is currently $2.45 per pound, up 1.3% from January and over 15% from January 2022. But white bread is still at $1.88 per pound, up 0.8% from last month and over 21% from January 2022. Americans consume an awful lot of processed American-style cheese, about 5.32 billion pounds in 2021 alone, according to Statista. The price has increased significantly. The average price of a pound of processed cheese is now $4.72, up 1.3% from last month and more than 19% from a year ago. Energy. The price of gasoline jumped by 2.4% in January, contributing to a 2% rise in the overall energy index for the month. Gasoline prices increased by 3.2% before the seasonal adjustment in January, although electricity's index climbed by just 0.5% during the same time period. Natural gases soared by 6.7%. There was a yearly increase of 8.7% in the energy index. Throughout that time period, the price of gasoline rose by 1.5%. In the last 12 months, the index for fuel oil went up by 27.7%, while the index for electricity went up by 11.9%, and the index for natural gas went up by 26.7%. Everything except food and energy. In January, the index for all purchases excluding food and energy increased by 0.4%. During the last month, the shelter index has increased by 0.7%. Since December, both the rental price index and the owner-occupied equivalent rent index have increased by 0.7%. In January, the index for lodging away from home went up by 1.2%. The shelter index was the main reason why the index for everything except food and energy went up each month. Other components of the index both went up and down. Insurance for motor vehicles had a 1.4% rise in January, while recreational activities gained 0.5% and clothing grew by 0.8%. The household furnishings and operations index went up by 0.3% in January, and the communication index went up by 0.4%. During the previous 12 months, the index for all things excluding food and energy increased by 5.6%. During the last year, the shelter index rose by 7.9%, making up approximately 60% of the overall rise in all categories except food and energy. The domestic furnishings and operations index rose 5.9% during the last year, while the medical care index rose 3.1%. The entertainment index rose 4.8%, and the index for new cars rose 5.8%. Housing. Some potential purchasers were encouraged by historically low mortgage rates in the first month of 2023, but that trend has apparently run its course. As a result, home selling prices remained on a declining trend. Many experts are still uncertain as to how much further property values will fall this year. One reason is that there is still a shortage of homes in the country. People who bought houses in the last few years when rates were historically low are staying put. In addition, January saw a decline in the building of new homes, adding to the ongoing inventory shortage. Price stability is being hindered in part by a lack of available homes for sale, making homeownership unaffordable for many people. Although housing prices are still high when compared to this time last year, they are not at the eye-popping levels seen in early 2022. Even still, where mortgage rates go in 2023 will certainly determine how much farther house values drop. Clothing. If you're wearing yoga pants and a sweatshirt while you read this, you might be surprised to hear that clothing prices have gone up by 4.2% since last year. One reason for this is President Biden's continuation of previous President Trump's trade policies with China, which have led to a rise in cotton prices. Similarly, given the current economic climate, retail employees are demanding pay increases. The costs of loungewear and athleisure have increased since they are now trending. The price of dresses has climbed by 11.9% due to pent-up demand, while the price of suits and sports coats for men has increased by 4.7%. Similarly, after a year of growth spurts, children who returned to school this fall needed new clothing, and prices grew with them by 1.4% for boys boys and 2.8% for girls. Albeit all the hikes, there's some good news. In January, both the Medical Care Index and the Doctors' Services Index dropped. In January, both the index for hospitals and the index for pharmaceuticals showed monthly increases of 2.1%. The used vehicle index dropped 1.9% in January, following a previous decreasing trend, and was one of the several declining indices over the course of the month. A 2.1% decrease was seen in the airfare index throughout the last month. Even though inflation is still high, many Americans spent lavishly last month on things like going out to restaurants and buying new cars. In normal circumstances, this kind of increase in consumer spending would be quite encouraging for an economy like the United States. But there is a catch. The Federal Reserve is actively increasing interest rates to keep inflation in control, and all that spending threatens to put additional upward pressure on inflation. Do you think inflation will be controlled in the coming months? Or is there a recession around the corner? Thanks for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Additionally, if you're new to this channel, I strongly encourage you to subscribe and click the like button. You can also keep up with all of my most recent videos. See you in the next one.